Hi everyone, and welcome to your horoscope for the week of January 17th, 2021. We have a super intense week ahead of us. This is where we begin the week under the light of a really tense full moon that is going to act like a massive emotional wave washing us over. And also, something that is really specific about this full moon in the sign of Cancer. So on Monday, on the 17th of January, well, it's cardinal energy. So that means it's pretty intense and it will definitely one way or another play out on the world stage. But of course, if you'd like to listen to specifics about this really intense celestial conversation, I have a separate video dedicated just for this event. Here I'm not going to be speaking about this in greater detail, but like any full moon, especially with a Pluto opposition, because at the very beginning of the week, we have the Sun conjunct Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, and together they oppose the Moon. And also, if we take into the consideration the dwarf planet, so trans-Neptunian objects, Eris in the sign of Aries, the sister of Mars, and Haumea, goddess of fertility and creation in the sign of Libra, we have a cardinal grand cross. So something is definitely bound to take place on the world stage, something that has to do with a revelation, with a truth sinking in deeply that will stir up spirits greatly. And this event is not just global, but because it takes place in the sign of Cancer, as in the full moon, the Plutonian sun projects its light on the moon and in her home sign of Cancer. This is specific to your region, to your community, your country, your ethnicity, and chances are, amongst whatever plays out collectively on the world stage, which might have a lot to do with money, world economy, rights, and the misuse of power, new restrictions, or people strongly protesting something regarding restrictions or some decision that centralized power may have taken, unilaterally of course, in the local community. This can represent high tension between ethnic groups, borders, people protecting their borders. This might be an energy which really goes against immigrants, immigrations, people wanting to protect, by all means, Eris, of course, their ethnical distinctiveness, their cultural distinctiveness. So this energy is really multidimensional in this perspective. And chances are it's already playing out in our local communities. For example, my own community, in my country, there is a lot of really violent tension at this time between people from the country's culture and Romani gypsies, so a small ethnicity. And usually this tension doesn't play out in this sense. Usually it's just, political correctness and dramas, but now people took to the streets. Like, it's real fighting, which is very unusual. A city rebelled against a certain ethnicity who is part of criminal organization, and they want the mayor's head, like literally. Now, strictly personally, a way this energy can play out, well, Cancer, an erratic moon in Cancer, where it is that you belong to, a group, a place, a family. This is where the soul wants to find a place of comfort, a place of belonging, whatever that means to you personally. But if we do not necessarily have this in our lives, or maybe for some people, this is the greater problem, the greater difficulty that they're facing emotionally, this will really stir us up. And at the same time, Cancer moon, full moon, with Pluto projecting its light upon it, this will stir up emotions like nothing else, to be totally honest with you. So at the beginning of the week, we can expect a lot of turbulence emotionally, and feelings running high as possible. For some people it can even be a little bit violent and self-assertive, Eris in the warrior sign. For other people it is a moment of maximum honesty, a maximum bravery and courage, where they speak their truth, they express their deepest feelings regardless of the consequences. And this can break families, this can break relationships, but Haumea, goddess of creation, this can also form new bonds and simply erase a dark chapter from our history, Cancer, family history especially, where the truth sets everyone free. For example, a child for the first time is honest to their parents, like, look, I don't want to do this, or I'm not who you think I am. And it leads to acceptance. It is tensionate and it is tearful, but it's a massive release at the same time. Or for example, I can, as much as I dislike passionately to talk about myself and my own example, I shared certain wounds that I had all my life with someone very, very unexpected, and that gesture healed me. But of course, this is just one nuance of the energy that we have just at the beginning of the week, just on Monday. To add to this, we have Uranus standing still in the sky, stationary, which means its symbolism is greatly amplified. This is a highly rebellious energy. So whatever emotional, deep truth that basically this full moon reveals to us or leads us to acknowledge, it makes us rebel one way or another. For some people, that gesture of rebellion is liberating. It is basically emotional freedom regardless of the consequences. While for other people, naturally it's anger. It is their desperate cry for freedom. Now, to add to this, we have Mercury already retrograde in the sign of Aquarius, so a part of the sky where it is very quick, very strong, very impulsive, very quick words, next to the Saturn, so a grounding, reality-based, reality check, kind of information communication, or anything that Mercury might need to do in your life. It can be business, it can be plans, it can be how do I accomplish this and that in a very, very practical sense. It can also be job interview, Saturn, work and sacrifice and invested time and energy. It can mean so very many things, but whenever Mercury is conjunct Saturn, it grounds it, it makes it highly realistic. This is where, idealistic plans and what ifs, which are not grounded in a real possibility, are not supported here. And this is where our minds want to make it as real as possible. So we have this strong urge and tendency to look at the realistic side of the events, regardless of what we do with this Mercury. And both of them hold a square to Uranus. Uranus is Mercury's higher octave. So this means surprise, shock. This can also represent very, very unexpected communication when whatever is delivered to you information-wise, even if it's internal, epiphany plans, brainstorming, or communication from authorities, bank, anything, letters, stuff like that, well, it comes as an urgency. It comes with a sense of haste. It, in a one way, it motivates us because it will tell us, well, look, you don't have that much time. You need to have a plan. You need to be at least grounded. You need to be at least prepared to seize any opportunity when it arises. But of course, this is Mercury retrograde. Whenever something arises, first of all, we must use this Saturn and think deeply and really, really methodologically. How, when it is ideal, is it working for me? Does it respect my dignity, my honor? Does it respect my own ethics, my own customs, my own traditions, the backbone of my life, psychologically speaking? And this will definitely add a lot of clarity to the larger Mercury retrograde season, where Mercury goes direct on the 3rd of February. This conversation just adds a little bit of clarity, of momentum, and this drive that we need to act very soon, not now, but we prepare ourselves, and things change, because when Uranus squares Mercury, nothing is stable. This is where it can change any situation from one moment to the next, but it still helps us prepare for the end of this larger Mercury retrograde on the 3rd of February, because that will be the moment when decisions will have to be made permanent, so to speak. So even though this energy is highly uncomfortable for a lot of people, this has a physical effect of severe anxiety, fear, panic attacks, heart palpitations, sleeplessness, because the mind will just not allow us to sleep. Overthinking, a strong sense of worry where the mind is just working and working. It cannot shut off. So the best medicine, the best cure for this is breath work. Even if you have not done this ever, even if it's not your thing, even if it's not totally in resonance with your practices or who you are, taking deep breaths grounds us. It helps us live in the now, and because it's a physical act, it also reminds the mind, the mental sphere, Aquarius, that we are in the now, and perhaps in the now we don't have to overthink as much, because, regardless of what urgency we have in our lives, if we cannot act right now, then overdoing it, overthinking, over brainstorming, or just worrying, or just allowing anxiety to get the better of us will really not lead anywhere. And this energy might be made even more uncomfortable because at the same time, Mars in the sign of Sagittarius squares Neptune. This is a totally different kind of energy. This energy can be a powerful illusion in the sense that, oh, don't worry because things will work out. Let's just stay in passivity. Let's keep on dreaming on. Let's keep on living on just hope and faith and just allow. And of course, this attitude, as part of this, is a really good balancing out, because we just infuse ourselves with faith and trust. But if we overdo it, well, then we defeat ourselves, because the Mercury and Uranus square does require, almost scream at us, that okay, we can trust, no problem with that, but we need to have maximum awareness, and awareness is always the key factor with Uranus. Whenever someone has a very tough Uranus transit, for example, or when Uranus does these conversations with delicate planets like Mercury, if we are ignorant, then it will strike us down it will beat us down, so to speak. If we are aware, it will just, poke us a little bit between the ribs that, okay, be ready, be aware, don't lose the awareness, and I'll leave you alone. Of course, symbolically speaking. So regardless of how powerful the anxiety, worry, the sense of urgency, or this, sometimes it can even turn to paranoia is, all we need to do is be aware that our situation is the way it is. We need to solve it, we need to fix it, and as long as we're in a state of readiness, that's all that is needed. And also with this Uranus, earthquakes, any kind of earth event, earth change, or even calamity could be expected at this time. Moon in Cancer, water energy, very, very powerful water energy, flooding or any kind of tsunamis, anything that can be related to water. And internally, of course, that water is hormones. Really, really strong hormonal disturbance for some people. Then the next day, the nodes of the moon shift signs. They leave the Gemini and Sagittarius axis and enter Taurus and Scorpio. And this is a really, really powerful energy shift that we might have been experiencing already. It was almost like a strong premonition that our lives are gonna be changing very quickly and very, very soon. This is where basically the karmic path, the nuance of the karmic path, opens the cycle of the next 18 months. Again, about this celestial event, I have a separate recording. If you would like to find out more, just look it up on my channel. This is gonna be really, really important, both individually and also collectively. Taurus and Scorpio, among so many, many things, is money, finances, debt, what we own, our belongings, our personal possession, how it is that we can, transmute basically our time, energy, skills, everything valuable about us into money, livelihood, income, real estates, property, banking, value systems, cryptocurrency with Uranus, or anything that has to do with the new, the next, the revolutionary. It is also powerful psychological energy, because ultimately Taurus is self-worth, and everything that we internally, mentally, emotionally, on a soul level, whatever it is specific to us, we attribute value to. And Scorpio, shared values. Scorpio, how we get what we want, how we transmute something into a greater value. Scorpio is also debt, inheritance, what we share money-wise, value-wise, possession-wise with other people, our partners, our children, our parents, our families, friends, even contracts, even business ideas. On the other hand, it's a very powerful psychological purge, Scorpio, and we will have this purge for the next 18 months of our lives. And there, I'm not going to lie, there will be difficult moments, especially when the nodes of the moons will hold a square to Saturn. Aquarius has a very strong nuance of dichotomy to it. It is the human collective, all for one, one for all, but at the same time it's also the uniqueness of the individual, the distinctiveness. And these two energies have to handshake. Saturn is limitation. Saturn will pose a lot of difficulties for us to accomplish that which we need to do even karmically, and this is for the long-term future. Taurus, permanent values, that which has to be permanent in our lives. And of course, this North Node in Taurus at one point will meet Uranus. I do believe that we might get the most positive side of this energy, a massive upgrade. Yet, we need to return to simplicity. We need to return to that which is natural, that which is rudimentary, that which is like a permanent value given by nature, given by Taurus, Mother Nature, a higher power than us. But with the South Node in Scorpio, Scorpio complicates. Scorpio digs as deep as it can. Like, let me just give you a very appropriate example. Taurus is you put the seed in the ground and it will sprout and it will grow a plant. You know this, everyone knows this experience, it happens all the time. Scorpio is when we look at this process from the perspective of a herbalist biologist who has a master degree in seed sprouting, if you know what I mean. It's the same thing both for the farmer and the biologist, but the depths of it is very, very different, yet still the same. It does the same. The farmer has the wisdom out of sheer instinct and of course what life and experience taught the farmer. The biologist learned that, but from a totally different source in great, great detail. So that is the difference in the simplicity and rudimentary value of Taurus and the complicated depths and basically infinite deeps of Scorpio. Because we have the South Node in Scorpio, we must not overcomplicate things, and every complication that might burden us, we must release it. We must even bypass it from a certain perspective. Sometimes we have to choose not to know. Even if we have the knowledge, we must choose not to apply it and just go in a much, much more simple and basic way around things. And I always use the power of example. Let's say you have a small skin discoloring or a spot or whatever, and Taurus Scorpio. You can choose to listen to your grandmother and put a certain plant juice or whatever on it, or you can choose to go to the pharmacy and put a substance on it. And chances are both will do the same thing. But the implications are a little bit different psychologically. If someone only trusts the pharmacy, let's say, well, you can imagine that that's already a mindset that they're digging deep into. Let's transform and let's alter the body through the substances, through science and research, Scorpio. And those who choose the natural way, of course, for simple things, things that do not pose a risk. Well, this is where we show ourselves. Nature, as soon as she invented the problem, she already had the solution on a silver tray. So maybe nature sometimes is smarter and a greater scientist than our top, best, most renowned professors in the world. And at the end of the day, it's just value. What do we find valuable? The pharmacy or Mother Nature? It really, really, really depends on us. Scorpio is also genetic research, genetic alteration, genetic mutation done on purpose, of course. So that is also something that is going to be playing out in the next 18 months of our lives. But the square to Saturn here responsibilizes. It says everything needs to have a limit. And this is perfectly true even for the expression of the North Node in Taurus, because nature has a very cruel side, and sometimes we must choose to limit that for our own safety and protection. But of course, this is the long-term energy. What might be just applicable for next week is a very strong inner calling that we need to shift out of the mental and higher philosophical energy of Gemini, Sagittarius axis, even the spiritual side, even the religious side, even the Gemini, walking, talking encyclopedia. It is now when we have to put down the course, the book, the text, the methodology, and just live and do it, Taurus. This might be like an inner calling that we might experience straight away. Let's go and live it. Or Scorpio, let's go and actually dig deep and know from our own perspective through our own research and not someone else's. Now on the 19th, we have another very tensionate and emotionally active energy because there is a T-square. The moon opposing Saturn, moon in Leo of course, T-square this Uranus. As well, strong anxiety, perhaps strong fear, shock. Leo is the heart after all. But of course, this energy can turn into a massive motivation, like, whipping ourselves into taking action, or at least changing our attitudes towards taking action, being brave even when circumstances or our own emotional state doesn't necessarily favor that. Like it or not, around the 19th of January we need to act in a very brave but also responsible and diligent manner, because bravery should not equal, a stupidness or foolishness where we take a reckless action regardless, even if it's just communication, or something emotional. Now on the 20th of January we have a very powerful energy shift where the sun leaves the sign of Capricorn and enters the sign of Aquarius. So happy birthday to all of the Aquarian natives out there. So this will illuminate this part of the sky. Of course, this is mental energy. Capricorn was very practical, earthly. This is where we go back yet again to the drawing board and refine, reinvent, revolutionize our own plans. And the sun is definitely going to make some key connections, especially towards the very, very end of the week on Sunday. First, it meets Mercury retrograde in the sky and it holds a conjunction. This day will be very important for this larger Mercury retrograde season. The sun combusts, but the sun also adds a lot of clarity, especially coming from other people, internet, society, our group of friends, acquaintances, sometimes even total strangers, synchronicities, connections. But the sun is not able to bring forward its higher qualities because this is the opposite sign of its home, Leo, so it's debilitated. But of course that doesn't mean a lot. It just means that from a very heart-based perspective, heart-centered point of view, we shift into a more cerebral, mental energy. And this has strong practicality to it, of course. And whenever the sun meets Mercury, many times a year, of course, that is almost a prophetic energy. Mercury is the messenger of the gods, sun is Apollo, and when they meet, well, the light carries information from the light of our consciousness, the sun, into the mind and the mental sphere. So this helps us figure stuff out. But because it's also in combustion and the sun is not very comfortable here, well, we can also imagine that this will mean communication, confrontation, maybe angry words, selfish words, maybe a misunderstanding that will lead, of course, to greater clarity, because even miscommunication and misunderstandings that happen under this Mercury conjunct Sun, these have a strong meaning. These represent something. Figuring those out or digging deeper, asking questions, reinitiating communication, asking for specifications, clarity, regardless of the nature of the communication, that will lead somewhere. And with Mercury retrograde aligned with the Sun, any official communication may have errors, mistakes, we might need to redo them, we might need to make phone calls for the same problem 10 times until it's resolved. But be patient with this, because as I said, whatever happens, even if it's inconvenient, annoying, frustrating, or driving you insane, there is a deeper meaning to it. And it will be another important step for this larger Mercury retrograde season, because it gives us the info, the statistics, the reality check, of course, that we also might need, because the other week the Sun will meet Saturn, so that is a very, very strong moment of the year. This happens every year when we get a reality check. Also on Sunday, the very, very end of the week, Uranus is already direct. Its symbolism turned outwards. So a lot of Uranian activity is going to be playing out. Science, research, let's step into the new. Let us finally execute all those plans, epiphanies, bright ideas. Whatever we have done, both individually and collectively while at the drawing board, until now, let's try to find a way to make them applicable, to use them, to work with them, to create them in many cases. And also there is a strong synergy between Uranus in Taurus and Venus, because Venus is the ruling planet of Taurus, and they together hold a celestial conversation of supreme harmony, a trine. And this can be a really, really good energy. This energy might be a little bit of sugar, honey, surprise, delight, joy, pleasure, or a very, very strong sensation that emotionally we are getting to clarity. We can figure ourselves out. We finally understand ourselves. Venus, the heart, the feeling, the sensuality, our desires and our values are no longer conflict with our minds, Uranus. So this will be a key moment for the larger Venus retrograde season. This is when finally we already have hope, or there might be a big surprise, a big revelation, or an inner epiphany, or for some people this is money. Venus in Capricorn, the material life in the practical sense. Taurus is our value system and everything that we own, everything that we possess. This can represent a present. This can represent a very, very lucky breakthrough for some people. Very unexpected, which would be a massive game changer, because that is what Venus retrograde is doing. Venus is the lower benefic, so many times she acts as Jupiter. There can be a lucky breakthrough when she holds harmonious conversations, especially with Uranus. Uranus has also some to do with luck, but Uranus is the hazard. Uranus is sometimes chaos can lead to good fortune. Venus is that which we want to attract, that which our soul calls for. So when these two planets are in harmony, especially the synergy between them, this can represent a massive lucky breakthrough for a lot of people, either money-wise, financially, career-wise, work-wise, professionally, or love, because ultimately that is what Venus is: love, beauty, romance, partnerships. Maybe someone will surprise us romantically in such a way that it blows our minds. Or maybe we meet someone who will change our lives in an instant, in a second, but forever. Also, part of this Venus retrograde season, because as I said, Venus is yet to hold her third and final meeting with Pluto. After she ends her retrograde and goes forward, advancing on her shadow path, that will be a very, very important moment. And chances are, whatever happens on Sunday, it doesn't really matter what it is. It can simply be just a gesture. It can also just be a moment of emotional epiphany when we know without a shadow of a doubt what we feel, what we want, what we desire, and there is no more questioning in it. The heart will scream that this is what I want. So that is one of the highlights of next week, because everything else, every other day, is definitely going to be emotionally like a tsunami. Also on Sunday, two other but minor celestial conversations are going to take place in the sky. One of them is Pluto meeting Juno, asteroid Juno, goddess of commitment, the wife of Jupiter, the very, very loyal and devoted wife who tolerated Jupiter's infidelity, fun and games, so to speak. And Pluto is the planet of transformation, planet of change, a big truth not coming out, but when Pluto meets Juno, that is when we do something based on that truth. Either we commit to something because we may feel an incredible urge and attraction that is exactly what we want, we are sure of ourselves. Or for some people, that is the moment when they decide, I'm breaking this commitment regardless of what it takes. This commitment may represent a relationship, a romantic relationship, marriage, business partnership, association, quitting job, quitting career, or simply changing your modus vivendi forever. But this is a minor celestial conversation, so it is just the feeling of it. Another important conversation is the North Node conjuncts asteroid Ceres. And actually Ceres is not even an asteroid. She is a dwarf planet, so it is very, very relevant. Ceres in the sign of Taurus is nurture. For some people, it is food, like literal food, which means indulging our taste. But of course, it's not just about pleasure. For some people, this will be a very strong soul calling to eat more naturally, healthy, or it can even represent, Taurus economy, where we make the decision that that's it, I'm gonna support the local growers, local farmers, I'm gonna contribute in my own way to the balance and the prosperity of the local production farms, etc., etc. For some people, this might be a moment when they regenerate their digestive tract, especially those people who suffered from indigestion or stomach problems, or maybe they had some toxic infection that targeted their digestive tract. But this also has a really big spiritual implication because it also conjuncts the dwarf planet Sedna. Sedna is a permanent guest in the sign of Taurus because I do believe that she takes 10,000 years to revolve around the zodiac, so she is gonna be in this part of the sky Taurus for a very long time, and she's also an erratic degree. She's also conjunct Algol, and this Sedna symbolism is the spirit within nature and how that evolves nature. So basically, nature evolves in a physical sense, as in mutation and evolution of species, also guided by the spirit, the great blueprint of the universe. So for me, this represents a strong source of emotional, spiritual nurture, one that for some very special people will manifest in a very, very direct manner. For example, what does it take for you to embody your perfect lifestyle which supports your balance, your spirituality, and everything in your life in the most balanced way? That might just fall in your lap. But of course, there's also bad news, because at the same time Mars is in an erratic degree of Sagittarius. An erratic degree is shadow expression, and the symbolism of the planet is greatly amplified. The dark side of Sagittarius is cruel judgment, religious fanaticism, discriminating people, but of course not the Virgo sense, but in a legal sense, because Sagittarius is the law, and this is where discrimination, the dark side of Sag, might actually be woven into legislation which should be moral. So this can represent when people strongly protest against certain laws. This can also represent a lot of fight against travel restrictions. People want to go on holiday, Sagittarius. People want to live and experience their extravagance, their exotic taste, their exotic desires. This can also represent some accident, for example, Mars is fire, in aviation or space travel. And perhaps the most uncomfortable side of this energy is that Mars holds an outer sign conjunction with dwarf planet Ixion, a really, really malevolent and malefic energy, which represents total immorality, criminality at its finest, total lawlessness. So there will be definitely a big increase of crimes. However, Mars is in Sagittarius, and another dark side of Sagittarius, which might not really be dark in its literal sense, is that the law is the law. If you made a mistake, you're going to be punished, regardless of who and what. There is not going to be favorable circumstances for you. And since Ixion is the criminal, some criminals, especially the Capricornian criminals, financial criminals, sexual criminality, big corporations, organizations who did something which is against morals, which is against the law, with that which was hidden, they are gonna be severely punished. And not necessarily for the sake of justice, but centralized power, governments, etc., law enforcement has to set an example. So whoever that example is, whatever criminal organization, criminal as in a person, someone who had questionable businesses or corruption within state government is gonna be set an example and punished severely to give people what they want, of course. But sadly, there is an even darker expression of this conjunction. Mars in the sign of Sagittarius at an erratic degree. This can represent international conflict where Sagittarius, the foreigner, certain countries will get into conflict with one another. Mars is god of war, but I do believe or hope that this is not going to be physical war. Just, perhaps legal or diplomatic or, Sagittarius, borders being shut off for one another. So a divorce in a good relationship. But it can also represent acts of religious fanaticism, terrorism, sadly speaking. So there might be shocking events on the world stage because Ixion is in Capricorn and Capricorn is the world stage. So that might definitely come through as a big shock, again another shock. And of course, another expression of this energy, which is less likely to play out because, astrological predictions just show the tendency. How it will play out exactly, well, no one knows for certain. And this energy might overthrow a government in a specific place in the world. And that also might come through as a shock, where people or a group of people, perhaps in the name of religion, will take power, law, authority in their own hands. So this is what we can expect to play out in our lives individually and on the world stage next week. Thank you so much for being here and listening. I wish everyone a blessed and really, really wonderful week. Until next time, bye for now.